Welcome everyone to build 34 part 1. This is going to be a Thermaltake View 31 build, and it's my first time building into this case. It's actually my first time building into a Thermaltake case since the early Thermaltake armor cases, so it's definitely been a long time. I don't know, we just don't get many Thermaltake build requests. Looking at this case, it is definitely going to need a lot of modifications to fit all of these extreme components, particularly the dual loops. But this is very common for any mid-tower case these days that we build into. And all of the mods that we have to do are very similar. Fitting dual 360mm radiators, if you want to have a proper radiator mounting surface and proper airflow, most of the panels are completely blocked off these days, then you need to mod both the top and front panel. If you want to mount the fans on the outside for more space in the case, which is often mandatory if you want to fit dual loops and have dual pump and res combos, again, you need to modify the front panel and also the outer front panel. And there's just a whole lot of other mods that you guys see us do for the cables to fit enough PCIe cables for SLI. But anyway, that is definitely going to be a big part of this build. We have some components here which I'm really looking forward to testing. I cannot wait to boot this system for the first time. And as always, there will be overclocking benchmarks and temperature results towards the end of the build log. So we have the Rampage 6 Extreme and the Intel Core i9 7920X, which we are going to be delidding and using liquid metal. And this build will have 128 gigabytes of memory, SLI GTX 1080 Ti's, so definitely going to be some interesting results. I've started on the case mods for this build. Because we have so many high-end components here, SLI, dual loops, it's really important that we have excellent airflow through the front panel. And by default, this case has the front panel completely sealed up with a clear plastic section. And because we're putting the fans in the front, they would have been right up against it. And you only have this little bit of ventilation just there. And considering that is the only cold air intake for both radiators, both loops, and cooling all of these components, we definitely had to open this up. So I've built an aluminium section and painted it. And I even managed to curve it to match the original plastic section that fit here on our guillotine folder roller. Now I only need to add a section of mesh in there. Now I was thinking that that's all we need to do, but we don't build into Thermaltake cases too often, so we didn't actually know that this case doesn't fit an extended ATX motherboard. But you can see there are no cable routing holes here for this motherboard. So I'm going to remove this section and replace it with aluminium with the correct cable routing holes. The other problem that we have here, for the power supply, this hole is not going to be big enough for all of the components that we are running, all of the cables. So I'm going to have to open this up. I'd also like to install a power supply shroud to cover up the power supply and all of the cables and connections on the back of the power supply because it's a mess. And I'm also going to replace this front section. I'm going to cut it out and replace it with a piece of aluminium to get proper radiator mounts in the front and get the radiator positioned where we want it, and also so that we can mount the fans on the outside, which right now you can't because of this little fold here. The fans wouldn't actually end up sitting flat, they'd be on angles, and that's just not something we're going to put up with. So yeah, quite a few mods to be done. We're going to be hacking up this case. So finally, after many long hours of modding and custom paint, the case is ready to build into. It's ready for final assembly. And the assembly compared to the mods really doesn't take much time at all. It's just the custom parts of a build that take all of the time, the case mods, the custom paint, the custom cables. But I guess they're the funnest part. So, I mean, the assembly is fun, particularly the loop. I always have the most fun designing and building my loops. Bending the tube, and of course filling the loop is the most satisfying part. But I'm really happy with how this case ended up, and it's actually thanks to the quality of this case. I mean, I was quite surprised. The steel is thicker than what I'm used to. It's really a good base to start with for modding, and it's a bit wider than most mid towers, so this gives you more options, more space for more components, and you can experiment with different ideas for mods. For example, you can see the gap between the edge and the power supply shroud. That was still possible, and there's another gap on the other side for the power supply. It's quite spacious, except for the radiator at the top, which comes down very close to the motherboard. They really should allow more space at the top for radiators. I mean, we're down to the thinnest radiators that you can possibly purchase, and still it is quite cramped, but at least with the width of the case, the radiator and fans can overhang. So we are now delidding the 7920X, and as most of you will already know, delidding does come with risk, but if you have the right tools for the job, it certainly helps, and it makes it very quick and easy. So this is the Bauer Delid tool, or one of them, and this is a beautiful tool. This is very well made. I mean, obviously I have a lot of manufacturing experience now, and I would, this is all CNC milled, just like all of our components, and that's an extremely expensive and high quality process. So yeah, the tool is definitely worth the money.